I'm ready to play fantasy. I know I turned 2 in a day, but the lace isn't hot in my veins. I can turn 2 in every way, so I turn to YouTube today and smash play. I'm prepared to listen. The X-Fippin' whip got me looking way past the pitches. Statistics all that I know, and I know that who is on first, you can say I'm ready to go. I ain't trying to steal second or third, cause I wanna win first. How am I to put all of these numbers to words? I know the terms from A to Z, it's like a gift and a curse. I know the difference between a splitter and a curve, but if I can't put it into points, man, then what's it worth? I need the truth, I need knowledge. Found this podcast with all of it, but what they call it? Turn 2. Turn 2, what it do? Win leagues, catch out. Peace.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Turn 2 podcast. I'm your host, Matt Williams. You can find me on Twitter at MATTWI77IMS. We're coming to you Wednesday night live for another divisional breakdown. We have a very special guest. We'll get to him in 1 second. If you're watching us live on YouTube, you already know who he is. But for all of you listening, joining me as always, my co-host, Mr. Brian Seymour. Brian, what's going on?
Not a lot, man. I wish I could say feeling really good about things. I don't know if we'll get into the CBA here. It's been, nothing is happening right now. So we'll kind of see what happens. But hey, we're still drafting. I am personally in 3 right now, and all of my picks are spread out very far apart. So there is no action happening right now. So
I saw the other day you were like on the clock on like 4 or 5 leagues at the same time, were you? Or you were on back?
I call it the Bermuda Triangle. Every now and then that pops up. Yeah. So I'm not dealing with that right now. So.
Okay. So for anyone who's been following the series, we're on the American League Central. We're going to go round robin style, and we're going to talk about our over and undervalued picks. And we always have a special guest today. We are being joined by Jeff Erickson. First time on the podcast. Needs no introduction, but over at Rotowire, does the Rotowire podcast. The man, pretty much the man over there as far as like the editor on the baseball side. So Jeff, thank you for taking the time. Very happy to have you here.
I'm thrilled to be here. I appreciate the invite. Love talking baseball this time of year. Even if things aren't great in the labor climate, I'm still doing drafts. So just like Brian, I've been in that situation. A couple of weeks ago, I was on the road, went to humble brag, went to the Bengals-Titans game, and I had 3 NFBC Draft Champions Leagues going on at the same time. One hour pick window, another with a 2-hour window, another with a 4-hour window. And for some reason, I got pounded with picks during that game. While I was at the game, while my phone was dying on me and all that, I think I was down to 1% at the end and just barely made it home. But it's like I got every pick in though too. I was just might have been furtive at times, but it's great. I love draft season, and I like slow draft season because I have a little bit of time to think about each pick. I can dig in a little bit more. I do my initial set of projections like everybody else in this community, and then you battle test those projections. You decide, okay. Does this feel right? Or is this guy hanging in my queue and should I be passing on him? Should I downgrade him because of that? And, or did I miss out on some guy and do I need to bump him up? And I think it's great for that purpose.
The dream being at a NFL, your favorite team's NFL playoff game while doing some fantasy drafts. Were you at the? I saw that someone in the industry had a box there and they invited people out. Were you in that luxury box? Is that where you were?
I was. Bob Cramiatola, who does a lot of drafts, he interacts with all of us, sent out a tweet saying, hey, if you're a content creator in the fantasy community and you're a Bengals or Titans fan, let me know. I might have a ticket for you. So I took him up on it. My wife and I went out, had 48 hours of fun in Nashville, and it was a great, great weekend. And Nashville, as you know, is a great town to hang out in.
Very nice.
As far as you're saying, you love doing the slow drafts. It gives you time. Do you have a preference on clock? Because I usually love avoiding the 4 hours like a plague, but then 2 hours, especially with depending on your time zone. If you're like Eastern, like me, they start at 8 a.m., go to 2 a.m. And if there's a run, all of a sudden you get autoed really late at night if you didn't set a queue. So I jumped in a 4 hour, and the problem is like you can pick any time between a half hour from now or like 2 days from now. Right. So it's a little hard to plan regardless. So it's like, it's supposed to be super convenient, but like, if you don't, you still got to check in. Do you have a preference on how you like to handle the slow drafts? Do you just kind of like check? Do you do the email thing? Like, what's your process for that?
I almost always have a browser tab open on it. In fact, I'm in one right now. That's a 4. It's the first pitch Arizona speakers draft, and we're like it's moving reasonably well for a 4 because it's all industry guys, so that helps. But 2 hours, I think, is the sweet spot. I'm out on the Best Coast, and it's great for night drafting. It's not so great for that 5 a.m. start time there. And you can get, if you don't have your queue loaded up, you can get some sneak attacks in there, especially like a 1 hour draft. And you get 6 people that are on auto. And next thing you know, you got picked. Like, Now, fortunately, I get up at 6 a.m. anyhow, just get my girls out the door to school and things like that. But it can catch up to you at times.
Well, Jeff, you were probably around back in the 8-hour days as well. Do you believe that was even a thing at this point?
Wasn't that the first year at TGFBI, if I'm not mistaken, where we did 8? And I know it's 4 now, but I think it was 8 the first year. And you could go a day, or maybe it was Scott Fishbowl. It was one of those community drafts, fancy community drafts where it's just dragged on forever. 8's it's just a bridge too far.
I think 8 hours was like the DC norm for years, actually. Yeah.
Being on deck is rough with those kind of clocks. You just don't. You're sitting there eagerly for an entire day. So we're going to jump right into our picks, everyone. We usually have a couple of guests, so we actually have a little more time, so we don't have to rush through. This is great. So if you're not familiar with the format, again, American League Central is what we're on. We're going to go through our underrated and overrated hitters and pitchers, and we'll save our favorite late round picks for the end of the show. So always starting with our guest, we're going to start with Jeff's most undervalued hitter fantasy-wise for the American League Central. Who's your pick, Jeff?
It's Robbie Grossman. Again, I know he was a massive underrated hitter last year after, plus 350 last year. This year, he's still coming in around 180, and he is the only player that's not going the first 10 rounds in a 15-team league. That was 2020 last year. There are 17 guys that had 20 stolen bases. There are 9 2020 guys from last year. I know 20 is an arbitrary endpoint, but you got to have one anyhow. So I drew it at that. He is by and far and large the latest of those to go. And I get it. He hasn't done it before. You don't think you're going to get as much category juice in the counting stats, perhaps because of the team context. But I see the Tigers as a team on the rise. That I think his runs will improve at the very least. He might even knock in a few more. And B, I think he's got the green light. I think that's the important thing. There's so few teams that give their players the green light. The Tigers are one of them. You see Baddoo run, you saw Grossman run. They signed Baez. He's going to run. I think that's something you can still kind of count on, and it's a reasonable hitting environment. So I still like Grossman, especially if you get locked out early. You're in a 15-team draft, and you're trying to dig for those 20 stolen base guys that don't absolutely kill you in other categories. I think he's an interesting play.
What do you think, Brian? Is he a target of yours? Someone that was a little bit of a trendy pick last year that people were hoping for what they saw in a small sample size. He proved that to be true. An average that won't kill you, especially last season where there was tons of horrible average. So, what do you think of Robbie Grossman?
I'm definitely a fan. Yeah. The thing that I don't really understand is the games played and the plate appearances projections that we're seeing. Now, this might just be like a simple, I know some of these projection systems are more complicated than this, but like a 3-year average type of thing. But Grossman's getting paid now. As you said, Jeff, he's in a good lineup, obviously, an improving lineup anyway with Detroit. I don't know what incentive there would be to really rest him very much. He's a switch hitter. He's a switch hitter. So, I don't know why he would only play 136 games. So, I mean, you saw how much he played last year. I don't think that probably changes all that much. Now, I know he has maybe a little bit of an injury history, but I think Oakland and definitely Minnesota, he wasn't really played to the level that they've been expecting to in Detroit, and now that they've paid him. So I like it. Yeah. I think, for where he's going, the kind of speed that you can get from him. Yeah. I'm a fan of where he's going.
I think in terms of the playing time, one of the things is most of the projection systems use a weighted average of sorts. And last year was the first year he got the whole package in terms of plate appearances. There first year over 600 plate appearances. I'm sure his past is dragging him down a little bit there. Even in 2019, which heretofore was one of his better years in terms of usage, he only got 482 plate appearances. He still was being platooned to a certain degree. And obviously that was his busiest year. Now he's kind of a little bit more established.
Yeah, I mean he's definitely. I love drafting the death by 1,000 paper cuts approach, where I try to only draft players that give me a little something in every area. I don't like drafting zeros at stolen bases. Throughout the draft, try to grab like 5, 10, but towards the end of the draft, these guys like Robbie Grossman are gold to try to fill in there. And I mean, they're valuable to every team, but yeah, it just seems like you said, incredibly undervalued. So I completely agree there. Brian, who's your player? Again, we're talking about Robbie Grossman, which was Jeff's American League Central underrated hitter. Who was yours, Brian?
We'll go over to the Cleveland Guardians and go with Ahmed Rosario. Now, some people might be a little surprised to hear me say this. And then a lot of, like 2 people, and a lot of private chats and stuff like that. I'm not somebody who likes to chase speed very much. And Rosario, I think at first glance, going at 146 overall, it's like, well, is that a little bit steep for what he's able to offer you? But I don't know how much earlier he could really go. And obviously we know that the shortstop pool is very deep, but I really like everything that he brings to the table here. And this is another one where, and I get it, he hasn't, been in the big leagues all that long, but dating back to when he was with the Mets, as you know, Matt, in 18 and 19, I mean, this guy played over or at 155 games. So I know he played 141 last year. He played 46 in the COVID shortened season. That was with the Mets, but I don't know why he only is projected for 140 games, 580 plate appearances. I think that we're going to get, why would this guy come off the field? I just don't really understand. I don't know if Cleveland's going to be that competitive. There's obviously some pieces there, and I could see them sneaking their way to maybe like a 500-ish record and be in it here and there down the stretch or whatever. But for what he brings to the table, a little bit of pop, obviously speed, great batting average, great hit tool. You can probably bank on 275. 280 is definitely in play too. Wonderful defensively. I don't know why he comes off the field. So, for me, you got to remember, I am always looking at these things, through a draft champions type, lens, because that's what we're really doing right now. And that's all about volume. I don't know why Rosario ever comes off the field, to be honest with you. So as a volume play and everything, I even though he, some people might think his price is a bit rich, I do actually like where Ahmed Rosario is going right now.
I mean, as a former Mets fan, I know that you look at some of his full seasons with the Mets that were good. Back in 2018, he stole 24 bags. In 2019, he batted 287, 15 home runs, 19 stolen bases. What people forget there is he usually did most of that in the second half. He usually struggled really hard in the first half and then had a monster second half. Someone that can, puts up a very high expected batting average as well. Like everything that he has, all the tools. He's even though he's incredibly fast, he's not very efficient at base stealing. But then again, that's something you can learn as you go. So, I mean, I am, no one likes a constant agreement, but yeah, I am in agreement with you because, you get, 2019, 287, 15, 19, 2021, again, didn't play strong the entire season. Still 282, 11, and 13 home runs and stolen bases for Ahmed Rosario. He's still only, 26 years old. So, I think that it's a good spot. I don't think it's a rich at all. I think there's a slight risk there, but the talent's there. It almost looks like if he's playing every day, which we think he will, you kind of have an idea what his floor is. And, everything, there's a tremendous ceiling still sitting there. What do you think, Jeff, of Ahmed Rosario?
It's interesting. He's shown a lot of growth. He was very inefficient on the base pass. In 2019, he got caught 10 times. 2020, it was really weird how he was only 0 for 1 in stolen base attempts. Why did he stop running? Probably because he wasn't on base. 272 OBP speaks to a lot of that there. I worry a little bit that his strike zone control isn't great, but he's 13 for 13 on the base pass. You got to like that. Cleveland is deep at middle infield. That's a slight concern. I'm not really worried so much about Andres Jimenez, but I'm worried more about some of the prospects in their system. Rocio, I always butcher his name, but Freeman's another guy you kind of have to worry about. Both of those guys might get the call this year. And both have some significant upside. However, I think second base is more likely to open than shortstop. I think probably Rosario's in pretty good
third
shape.
base looks like it might be opening.
Yeah, that too. Not
point.
so much.
All right. So, he's interesting. There's certainly risk there, but I do love the pick. And that's Ahmed Rosario. Moving on to mine, Andrew Benintendi, which is basically a little cheaper version of I don't know what the ADP is on Grossman and Benintendi. I feel like they go basically in the same ballpark.
Grossman's about 180. At least last I saw on that. But Benintendi is a little later even.
Well, yeah,
Actually, no, they are literally like 2 picks apart right now. I'm looking at the last 2 weeks. Benintendi 178. They're literally next to each other. Grossman
Really? So
176.
Benintendi's
Yes.
climbed up a little bit then.
Yeah. Yep.
yeah. So up and down, everyone was hoping the change of scenery would really work, and it did in Kansas City. So it's funny, everyone took the leap last year, hoping that he would have a decent season, and he had a strong one: 276, 17 home runs, only 8 stolen bases, which is interesting for him because he usually doesn't get caught a lot. In Boston, he went 20. And Benintendi stole 20, caught 5, 21 and 3, 10 and 3. Last year, 8 steals, 9 caught. I don't think that's going to continue for him. I mean, he still has his speed. I'm not quite sure. I kind of wish I kind of want to dig in to see like what happened, if it was just a bad send, bad read, like what he was doing there. But as far as his batted ball, he cut down his strikeout rate back down to 18% when he was in like his heyday for an early player in 2017, 2018 in Boston. He was like 17%, 16%. Then it jumped up to 22.8, 32.7 when he struggled horribly. So the Ks were brought way down. His walk rate didn't go back up to where it used to be. That kind of used to be a strength of his. But again, he's someone that can give you 15 to 20 home runs. And I think that, if he can somehow fix the wheels, there is an upwards of 15 to 20 bags in there still. I mean, I think the projections have him around 10. I would be expecting that more than that. But if you draft him just based on expectations, the Bad X has him for 277, 21 and 11, with some decent counting stats. So it's basically a Robbie Grossman with a little less power and a little more batting average. So yeah, I like both players. So yeah, Benintendi, I don't know why speed is so expensive early in the draft, and then these two guys kind of get a little disrespected in the back half. Jeff, what are your thoughts on Benintendi?
Well, we're all trying to catch up on power that we passed up for speed at this point. So that's probably what happens, or pitching of some sort, because we always need pitching. My concern with Benintendi is he's gotten increasingly pull heavy over the course of his career, and teams are shifting more and more against him. That seems like a kind of a bad combo unless you can hit it over that shift. And maybe he can a little bit there. Maybe he's got 20 homer upside. That might be the hope. Obviously, he's got to do better on the base pass so he can get that green light. The flip side is I think his defense is so good, he's going to get plenty of opportunities. So I think that will help overcome some of the drawbacks. I haven't ended up with him a whole lot there. I see the case for him. If I was choosing between he and Grossman, I'd go Grossman, probably by a round. But he'd be on my list of guys to consider.
And that's we're talking about Benintendi. What do you think, Brian? Because as Jeff was saying, he changed some of his traits at the plate. I mentioned that his walk rate didn't go up. He chased the ball more than he ever has. 34.6 O swing, but 10.6 swing is strike rate, decent in zone contact. So he's not swinging when he's making decent contact in the zone. I mean, there's a lot of upside if he can try to cut down on the chasing. But I don't think that's something to be expected. I think maybe that's just something he's going to do. It's too bad he's trying to sell out for power in the wrong ballpark. But let's just, do you like Benintendi? And if someone's choosing between Benintendi and Grossman, who do you prefer? Because I mean, I like both. I'll have shares of both.
Yeah, it's kind of uncanny how similar they are, and the fact they are just going back to back. Obviously, you're getting more batting average, it looks like, with Benintendi. But I think, to kind of answer the question, like the conundrum of like why these guys seem to be so easy to get back here, I think a lot of it is just that psychological, like the teams they're on. Neither one is super sexy, really, or anything like that. I mean, it's just, AL Central, people don't pay much attention to. Plus, we're looking at the Royals and the Tigers. Let's be honest here. But I'm intrigued by Benintendi too. I do give a slight edge to Grossman, but yeah, I like what I see. I wish there was more of a guarantee of the playing time. I think that could also just be because of some injuries from before and stuff like that. I'm not loving looking at a projection of 130 games. And honestly, what the Royals have and what they could do with some of their young players and stuff like that does scare me a little bit, although they did pay Benintendi. So where he's going, though, I think this is a good spot. Or am I lying? They didn't really pay him. He's actually still arbitration eligible. Wow, I didn't realize that. Okay. But yeah, I do still like where he's going. Yeah, I think this is a good spot for him. And again, another good, nice little sneaky pocket to find some late speed. So yeah, I am a fan of Benintendi. We're all just agreeing. Yeah.
Just a question for the both of you. I'll start with you, Jeff. Just we know the upside of the players I'm about to talk about, but as far as like if you're just playing from a pure projection standpoint, we're talking again the players, especially when we bring up the players we don't like. We don't dislike the players. It's just we're talking the value of where you can get them. Projection wise, there's not a big difference between the two players we talked about in like Randy Arozarena and Trent Grisham, especially Grisham that, maybe because of his kind of plate discipline. Well, no, he has good plate discipline, but as far as like he's like a Max Muncy who can have fantastic eyes and still have a low batting average. But I mean, they're kind of going to give you that 20 home run, like, kind of 15 to 20 stolen bases. So they're like a little better version, but like, what do you feel that those players are really worth that much more that you're paying for them versus the players we just talked about, where in the end, there's not going to be a whole lot of daylight between the four of them, probably if they all performed expectations.
Well, I think in the case of, especially with the Rosarena, that there's a higher ceiling than for a Rosarena than say Grossman or Benintendi. I think what we see is what we get with those two guys. That it's not going to get much higher for Grossman or Benintendi. Whereas a Rosarena, you don't have to really squint to see 30 homer power. I think that's you watch him play and you can see that there's a different level there. You saw, and granted, he did it on a big stage in 2020 in the playoff run. And I think that might lead to some of those expectations. I don't think you can see, I don't think you can see a Rosarena ceiling with Grossman or with Benintendi.
No.
Even I think Grisham's somewhere in between. Grisham probably is closer in comparison. I think a Rosarena is clearly head and shoulders above those three.
Oh, for sure. It was more of a, he's like, the brand, he's the name brand guy. And then you got Grisham is like, the guy that is trying to be, and then you have the two off-brand guys. It's more of a, do you think that do you believe in those upside enough? Do you think that the difference, the massive difference in ADP is really worth it? Because at other positions, there's a much larger gap here. It's more of, trying to highlight. And I like Rosarena. I mean, I agree with everything you said. It's just, it's interesting. I mean, Brian, what do you think of those guys? Do you think that the ADP ship, like the giant gap, is justified?
Well, with the Rosarena, obviously I do, but with Grisham, I totally agree with you there. Yeah, I think Grisham's never really showed like some of the skills that a Rosarena has done, and the what they can offer in terms of a roto style might seem similar, but I think Grisham, he could actually be in trouble as far as like some playing time and stuff like that. I definitely don't see drafting Grisham at 130 when you could get the two guys, Benintendi and Grossman, that we just talked about, where they're going about 50 picks later. So it's not crazy. I have a lot more faith in what a Rosarena is doing. But yeah, Grisham, I'm not really understanding the price there as much. So I do agree with you. Yeah.
Right.
All right, we're talking about, good.
Just one more thing. I mean, the problem with Grossman and Benintendi is you need more of them. You need Grisham and Grossman, or you need Grossman and Benintendi. You need more, because presumably you're not going out and drafting, a player we're going to be talking about in a second here, and Alberto Modesty, that's taking care of all your stolen bases. You're using Grossman as a catch-up, and you need more than just one. It's necessary, but not sufficient.
Yep. And a great lead into our next one. Those are our undervalued players. We had Robbie Grossman on, Mid Rosario, and on Andrew Benintendi. Jeff, kick us off with your overvalued hitter for the American League Central.
I feel like it's everybody's punching bag, unless the Siege is here, and then of course, he's unbelievably undervalued. But anyhow, I love you, Siege. But Alberto Modesty is my overvalued hitter. I think that the argument against him is pretty clear. He's injury prone, he's injured. You have a GM that's talking about how he can't be an everyday player and how they're going to have to manage him. And you're looking at a guy that only contributes in two categories: stolen bases and, to a lesser extent, homers. He's not going to help you in batting average. He's going to hurt you in the counting stats. If he's not on the field for 140 games, and I don't think I've seen any projection that gives him 140 games, you're losing ground in those categories. And that's the problem with Mondesi, is he's a 4th or 5th round pick, and you're losing ground in 3 categories offensively, and you're not getting a power hitter. You're not getting a starter. You're not getting a closer there. You're getting a specialist. And if disaster happens, and it's happened frequently with him, then you're catching up. And the problem is you've counted on him for your stolen bases too. And
Right.
You don't have, you haven't spread that risk over 8 players getting 10 to 15 stolen bases apiece. Your eggs are in the Mondesi basket. I just don't like the draft that way.
Yeah, I already said my affinity for the death by 1,000 paper cuts. This is the exact opposite of that. I will say one thing that about Mondesi, where especially he's just as far as play discipline, you look at like Victor Robles, you look at Javier Baez, you look at Jazz Chisholm. There's just certain players where you look at it like how are they have a batting average above 150, and they a couple of them managed to. In 2018, 2019, 2020, I mean, 276, 263, 256. I don't know if it's just like the speed, the BABIP skills. He can get you a batting average that will murder you. But again, it's here nor there if he's not going to play. Jeff, before I direct this over to Brian, how many games, if you drafted, let's just say he fell in your draft, where does he go? He's going now like what, fifth, sixth round, somewhere around there?
Something like that. Although I've seen a wide range of outcomes. Ryan Bloomfield just tweeted that he drafted him for the first time in his life, and it was fifth round in our 15-teamer. So that gives you a kind of an insight there in the 60s. And that's because he didn't have any speed. So he kind of felt compelled to do that there.
If he's going 52 right now, 52 over the last couple of weeks.
If he fell a little past there, and would it ever become intriguing enough where you were considering him? Let's just say for whatever reason, like maybe you fat fingered it and he's on your team. It's an accident. How many, if you're getting him in like the fifth round, how many games do you think you need? Do you think he needs to return value, not like exceed it? You said 140. Do you think you need those 140? Like
No.
if you got him and you knew you were getting 100 games, which would be the second most of his entire career, or 103 games, the most of his entire career. Do you think that would actually be worth it?
It might be to get 110 games out of Mondesi, 100 maybe. It's the same argument we make with Byron Buxton. Is the same thing we do with Mondesi. It's like how many is enough? And now people are making that argument out, but Jacob deGrom as a pitcher, and how many games would it be enough to justify his draft price too? And we can start wars over on Twitter about that. There's been less said to start Twitter wars in fantasy baseball community lately, but I would probably say you need about 100, 110 to make it justified.
No, I mean, not that we're just speculating completely here, but Brian, any interest at all? You play a lot of best ball. Is he someone that you at least want to have a share of, or is he just cleanly off your list?
Well, do remember he is also my overrated hitter as well. So actually, this is two birds, one stone with Jeff and I here. So no, he is definitely totally.
I'm just saying he is someone where your consideration for him is one of the ones that could change dramatically based on format. If you were going to, there's certain players where our best ball, you're like, okay, I'm going to maybe get myself one for the heck of it.
It's the trouble with that is even best ball is so dependent on volume. So I wouldn't be able to make the adjustment there either. And I just can't, we were talking about the projections, and the highest projected, well, actually the ATC projection for games played is 120. Even that would be the max he's ever played in his career. Now, he did magically play 59 in the COVID shortened season. If you want to go ahead and extrapolate that out and say that he played like 155 games that year, that's fine. But I don't think that's what would have actually happened. But your question to Jeff's intriguing. Like, what is the amount of games I would need to have like guaranteed to say, okay, I would take him here? And I think, I kind of agree with Jeff. I think like 100, 110, because you still figure you're getting 35 steals anyway, and at least maybe like a 60 in the run spot or something with some power and everything. But yeah, for where he's going, I'm not saying anything new. I mean, it's the old conundrum of like, okay, you can draft him, but then you realize in the back of your head, I actually can't really bank on those steals. So let me go ahead and back those up. And then you end up drafting like 150 stolen bases or something like that. And what's the point? Somebody is going, somebody may profit off of him one of these seasons. It is never going to be me. It is what it is. I tweeted out earlier today, I think this division more than any that we've done so far, there's so many hitters I could have chosen for this. Byron Buxton obviously was the other one. But the difference with Byron Buxton is he's like Mike Trout otherwise, when he plays. Alberto Modesty is not, obviously. So, there's just no scenario I'm taking him. I can't see it.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. It would be funny. It would be fun to have a unicorn season where Mondesi, Bobby Witt's up opening day. He rakes, Buxton's up. None of the Yankees get injured. It would be nice to have a nice unicorn year where it's just like, wow, nobody's getting injured. What's this about? It would totally ruin fantasy leagues because a full season of Mondesi, I can't even, or Buxton. I mean, full season of Buxton, I can't even imagine what that could look like potentially. And that's, of course, Alberto Modesty is both Brian and Jeff's overrated or overvalued header for the American League Central. Mine, which Brian told me ahead of the show, he strongly disagrees with me on. Let me say this before I tell you my overvalued player, everyone. I do not dislike this player. Don't give me I don't want any hate mail. I love this player. This just has to do with where he's going versus where other people are going. And it's Jose Abreu. Vlad Sedler loves Jose Abreu, who me and him have had a little bit of an argument on Twitter about this. And it's just a matter of, you're banking on the past of how he's always giving you these massive RBI numbers, when in reality, it's difficult to depend on that. And right now, the kind of player he is, as you know, another year older, he's going significantly earlier than Rhys Hoskins, Joey Votto, CJ Cron, Jared Walsh, Josh Bell, Trey Mancini, countless guys that all have almost identical projections to him. And other than Hoskins, who has a much lower average, everyone else is kind of in that ballpark, home runs and everything. Jose Abreu is a tick ahead, most of them. He's better. I mean, he's a better player, but he's going so early in an area where you can get, there's this glob of pitchers like the Frankie Montas area where there's so many guys there that closers are being pushed up. If you need to draft, all those second basemen like the Brandon Lau, Jonathan India, Jorge Polanco area, sometimes they kind of go in anything. There's so many ways I'd rather spend that draft capital where I don't understand why you'd go with Abreu. You got the top three in Alonso, Olsen, and Goldie. And then you just have Abreu kind of in no man's land where any of those guys I mentioned earlier, Hoskins, Votto, Cron, Walsh, Bell, who I really like, and Mancini even, because I think he gives you that batting average, possibly, that I just can't see spending up for it. So again, I like Abreu, but I don't know, Jeff, what do you think? Do you think he is that much better than that other group where it's worth taking him where he's going?
I think a couple things. One, there is a slight qualitative difference. I think health is also a skill, and I think he's proven that. He stayed on the field all but 1 year of his career where he's had at least 145 games. Obviously, the COVID year doesn't count, but I think that matters a little bit. The counting stats obviously are going to vary, but guess what? The White Sox lineup is still really good. And I think that's the biggest driver of his RBI count is the fact that he's got all these RBI opportunities. Sure, I mean, it's if they suddenly had three guys in front of him go down with injury, yeah, it would hurt his counting stats, but I look at it at face value, and they still have a really good lineup. I agree that he is below the last of that tier of Goldie, Alonso, Olsen. He belongs at least a round or two below those guys, but I think he belongs also. I think, you mentioned Mancini, for instance, just to just cherry pick it a little bit. They're moving the fences back in Baltimore, back and higher. Who's to say what Baltimore's hitters are going to be able to do there in this park this year? Hoskins can't stay on the field. He's got a horrible batting average, and he's a lousy defender, and that I think weighs on him just a little bit there too. I think that sometimes can drag on a player. You can find reasons for other guys, and there's a reason why CJ Cron has never been able to keep a full-time gig. I love CJ Cron. I play in a fantasy football league with him even. But at the same time, I hope he rakes in Colorado. I think it'd be great if he had that long-term stretch, but he's never been really given that stretch. There's always someone like nipping at his heels for playing time. There's a reason why Abreu is above these guys. If he goes around 75 to 80 in Jose Abreu, then I think I might be there for that if I don't already go with the first baseman. I do subscribe to the notion of you can get first baseman late that can help you if you're looking for other things. But if you're lacking power for whatever reason, I'm not offended by him going there.
I shouldn't say I'm offended. And it's also, I'm not trying to make the case that I think these other guys are better. That's not what I was meant to say if I came off that way. It's a matter of, I think where if you have to set every team is weak somewhere, especially in 15 team leagues. And first base seems just such like a good idea to go that route. I mean, what do you think, Brian? Because you obviously already told me you disagree. I don't disagree with anything Jeff said. It's just a matter of, I don't think it's a difference maker enough where I'd rather fill my middle infield spots, both starting and the middle infield spot itself before I even touch first base. Like I'd rather do that. So it's more for me a matter of what I can get instead of Abreu where he's going rather than wanting those other guys instead of him.
Yeah, I'm totally on Team Jeff here. I would say I vehemently disagree. Actually, I mean, I think Jose Abreu, like Jeff said, I mean, this is really important to me. He's got like Iron Man status. I mean, this guy's played like 150 plus games 5 times. It's incredible. And some of the names that you mentioned, I'm intrigued by some of them. I have some intrigue in Jared Walsh. I think Jared Walsh carries a ton more risk than Jose Abreu does.
To continue your point, I'm not in on all those guys. Those are just guys that
Right.
projection wise, again, projections are projections. They're going to, if they all finished with the same projection along with the one Abreu has, they're all, close. So, but
Right.
you can't obviously bank on that to be a real thing.
Right.
You strenuously object. You don't, you're like a few good men there, but go ahead.
Yeah, so same thing that you said, Jeff. I mean, Rhys Hoskins is hurt often. I mean, he's kind of just a pumpkin out there. CJ Crone, same thing. He's always hurt. Now, yeah, great. He's in Colorado and everything. Josh Bell, I still have lots of question marks. That lineup's getting pretty porous, and he's had 1 or 2 okay seasons. Actually, of the names that you mentioned, Matt, to go back and look at and like that they have similar projections, I'm most intrigued by Votto and Mancini, and literally, I think just with the skill and the price combined. But to me, at that point, Votto going in round 10, Mancini going, I guess it'd be like round, I don't know, 16 or something like that. I can't do the math in my head. But anyway, Mancini, where he's going, at that point, I'm kind of looking more at like a corner infielder type or something like that. So I understand the projections are similar. I would throw all of them out, and I just totally disagree with them. I think Abreu is going at a fine price. Now, I will say he's going 89th over the last couple of weeks in NFPC DCs. I have frequently, when I have been able to get him, because so many people seem to think like you, Matt, I've frequently gotten him 95 to 100. So I have benefited from getting him more towards kind of a max pick territory, which is cool. But no, I mean, everything's there. I really, really value volume here. And I don't want most of those other guys compared to Jose Abreu. And honestly, to me, I was going to say this too. I've been making this joke on Twitter a lot. He, to me, is the poster boy this year for like, why would I get Jose Abreu if I could drop down and get Bobby Dahl back? No, I'm being facetious there, but like, there's a lot of that thinking going on right now. And I don't see that with Abreu. I think that he is extremely consistent. Like Jeff said, terrific lineup. Yeah, I'm okay with him at that price. I'm not saying that he's undervalued or anything. I just think that he is fine where he's going.
I should reiterate again. I do love Jose Abreu. He's a great guy to root for. I love the team too. So I guess we'll just, I hate the term agree to disagree, but I guess if you just give me the season Abreu did last year, give me the season Josh Bell did last year. And there's a big gap in those RBIs, batting average, power, everything else. I essentially identical. I would take, if I knew that was the outcome, I would rather have Bell and use the draft capital elsewhere. So I guess we just maybe I just like the other players going in that area a little bit more. I love that area. So maybe I should have another podcast where I just talk about the Jose Abreu ADP area. But anyway, that is Jose Abreu.
That's a good point too. It's an opportunity cost. I mean, you're clearly, if you feel you're getting comparable production from these later first basemen, and you find yourself getting a closer, another starter, well, sure, I get the argument for that. And I think that can be made. But you think that Josh Bell had an RBI problem because of the Nats lineup last year. Wait till you get a hold of this year's lineup. It's going to be super fun.
Just sign Colin Moran. Everything's going to be fine.
Oh, boy.
It's gonna be brutal. So that was Jose Abreu. Now we're moving on to our undervalued pitchers. More good news for everyone. So Jeff, you had a couple listed here. I don't know if you want to hone in on one or hit them both up. But who's your undervalued pitcher for the American League Central?
Well, I think about 10 years ago, ESPN came out with a strategy on their daytime television shows: embrace debate. So let's go with the guy that is a debate topic here. I like Casey Mize for his price. You do not. So let's jump in on that. I see some of the arguments about what Casey Mize has done so far. He hasn't had the strikeout rate that we'd like. It's, I think, 19% strikeout rate, 10% swing and miss. It should be higher. It's less than 10% swing and miss. I get it. However, I think there's pedigree here. I think there's 5 pitches that he's honing on. I think he's one of those guys that might have a better idea of his pitch mix. He was babied last year a little bit. I think he gets a few more innings under his belt. And most importantly, I think the biggest point in favor of Casey Mize and all the Detroit pitchers is that the Tigers went out and traded for Tucker Barnhart, one of the best framers in baseball, one of the best pitch calling catchers in baseball. I think you're going to see the Detroit pitching take a leap all across the board. They're going to improve their shortstop defense with Javi Baez, unless they bring in Correa, in which case they improve both shortstop and second base. Mize benefits more than anybody else on this, I think. This is a classic case of go where the puck is moving, not where it's been. I want to be there when Casey Mize hits that next level. And at pick like 250, 270, I think that's a very reasonable price. You're talking starting pitcher 6 or 7. I want to be there for that.
Another thing where I bring the hate mail. It's always a bad idea to jump on the anti-bandwagon of a pitcher that has such high upside and you think is going to be great in the future. So this is more of a timing issue for me.
Okay.
Where you mean the one thing is like the sparkling ERA, which could have actually sent his ADP much higher than it currently is. Right now he's sitting in like 280-ish, and that is okay. Min pick around like 214. So there occasionally someone's going to jump the gun, but where he's going, it's reasonable enough. But it's still in the area of, the Kyle Hendricks, if you buy like a bounce back there. I love Josiah Gray, who is the, I guess, anti-Mize, where he struggled mightily, but he showed incredible potential. So there's in Tyler McGill, but I'm a Mets fan, so it's a homer pick. But for all the kind of the things you said, he had that 3.7 ERA, expected ERA was like 4.92. We all know the whip was kind of a mirage. The 12.6 K minus walk was super poor. And like you already kind of alluded to that 19.2% strikeout rate, which again, I wouldn't shock me if it went up. It's just, the swing, he wasn't getting anyone to chase in zone or out of zone. 28.70 swing. The league average is like 31.3. He was getting barreled up too. So everything was getting hit over 10% barrel rate. It just seemed like everything we saw results wise, like as far as just the stat sheet, seemed a little bit of a mirage. I would more hope for him just to make incremental improvements rather than break out this year. If he did, like you said, I think all the moves they're making, it's going to be great across the board. I would rather just take another pitcher in that area that I'm a little more confident in. So I think just what I see when I'm looking at him is he's more likely to kind of hit a wall. I think we see brilliance this year. So I think anyone expecting like a full season of Casey Mize being good, I think we see a dominant Casey Mize at some point, but I do think there's like growing pains enough where I'm not interested. I do like the entire staff though. I'll be taking a shot on like Matt Manning late in the draft, but again, he's he's going late because he looked terrible. So it's more of a timing thing for me. Do I think he's going to be great? Yes, but I think he'll probably struggle enough trying to figure out his like kind of elite arsenal before he kind of, I think it'll be too late where he might damage you enough where I don't kind of want to invest. Oh, what do you think, Brian? Because you can settle the debate. Are you in on Casey Mize or not?
I tell you, I don't know that I'm going to settle it because I'm going to land pretty much right in the middle. I guess I'm a little bit more with Jeff. But I'm not seeing a breakout necessarily, and I never want to try to pay for a breakout. But I think at 280, he doesn't even really need to do that. Now, I will say there are some names going around him that I'm also intrigued by. This is actually where I like to shop, to be honest with you, because there's some volume here that people are just totally not paying any attention to. And again, it's not sexy names or anything other than maybe Mize and Josiah Gray and stuff like that. But, you look at some of these names that are kind of innings eaters around here, and, the projection for Mize kind of matches Cal Quantrill, Aaron Savali, the whole Guardians rotation, I guess. But Mize, and I love your point, Jeff, about Tucker Barnhart too. I love Tucker Barnhart, and like bringing him in there is going to be really good for a lot of these young pitchers. I don't know that he takes that step forward, but at 280, I think just being kind of an innings eater in a good ballpark in a very nice pitcher's division, sign me up. I think that's pretty solid. And the pick disparity for him in the last 2 weeks in ADP for the NFBC, he's going around 280. He's gone as high as 221, low, high, 221, and his latest 384. It's one of the biggest disparities of where he is right now. So
that's wild.
I think our conversation right here is kind of showing how that's taking place. So, yeah, I like him where he's going. I'm not necessarily seeing the breakout, but I think like the volume he could give you in the circumstance, I think he's totally fine at that price.
I think a caveat that I forget too is that I should always mention, especially the mindset I'm in. I am a draft and hold player a lot, and I think that really takes. I think it changes the kind of risks that you're trying to go with. Where if as far as like the being able to move on from a player or the kind of bench you have. At that point, I'm kind of searching for certainty. So I don't like to take like that kind of. I don't like to take the kind of the low floor players at that point. So I had to do again, maybe back to the Jose Abreu thing. This area has so many more interesting names. So I guess that kind of how it shakes out. But so there's a lot of things here. Again, like the player, if everything Jeff said came true, absolutely would not shock me. It's an area I like to shop in. I'm just never pulling his name out of the hat, as at least that's for me.
For sure.
And
one more thing, and I will say that our interpretation of ceiling and floor is always interesting. Like what drives that sometimes. I'm famous for saying Rick Porcello has no upside, and then he won the Cy Young. So I said that on Sirius XM, and I made that point probably 3 or 4 times. And I think I was trying to say he had no strikeout upside, but still, I have to take that defeat lap. Most people take victory laps on Twitter. I'm a defeat lapist.
Real quick, where is he? What happened to Rick Porcello? Is he coming back? I don't. Where'd he go?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know where he went, to be honest.
I don't know. I have no idea. It's very weird. He's just kind of gone.
We had a question in the comments. He said, Jasper, he says, I like Matt Manning myself. I do think Mize had a better year. I think we all agree that we think that Mize is going to have a better year. I brought up Manning. I think someone's going to bring him up later in the show. He's currently going at 480. So we're talking like,
sure.
At that point,
it's a dart throw and that can't hurt you. I mean, that's only can help you. You have to take somebody in that range. And so, you go with the guy with the pedigree. I have no problem with that.
And that was Jeff's undervalued player, Brian. And again, that was Casey Mize we were talking about. Brian, who's your undervalued pitcher for the American League Central?
So doing undervalued pitchers for this division is so easy because I love the ballparks in this division and everything. We got a lot of good young guys. I love some of the pitchers we're talking about here. I'm going to go to the Royals and go with Brady Singer. Now, there's some concern here. I mean, like he was shut down. I think he was shut down towards the end of the year. His upper right arm issue, inflammation. I don't know how serious it was. And that could, there's obviously baked in risk, but for where Brady Singer is going right now over the last couple of weeks, 384. So, I mean, we're pushing 400. You're getting into like the reserve rounds and stuff like that here, but obviously huge prospect pedigree. Really wasn't that bad last year. I think if you look at some of his peripherals, he underperformed them. I mean, he actually did better, had a very low left on base percentage and stuff like that. BABIP was 350. And then the 12 starts he made in the COVID shortened season too, very solid. I mean, he was rock solid. He had an expected ERA of 385, FIP of 408. The FIP was pretty much the same last year at 404. I am a little bit concerned about the injury, but he's in a great ballpark. He is a lock for the rotation. I don't know what kind of innings we're going to be looking at, but again, for where he's going at pushing 400, the only kind of guys that are throwing over 150 innings are going to have probably worse peripherals than what Brady Singer is going to offer you. So again, I'm not necessarily saying maybe you're paying for a breakout, but I think some of the, I think like the ERA and like what he'll offer you as far as the peripherals and stuff like that are going to be good enough that with where he's going, even if it's not crazy innings, I think it's a pretty good value with Brady Singer near pick 400. So he is my underrated pitcher.
I'm going to turn this over to Jeff in a second because my take on it is very short. I'm confused by the Royals between injuries, intriguing people like Carlos Hernandez, and failed prospects and horrible years and weird bounce backs. They have Singer, Hernandez, Minor, Bubic, Lynch, Keller, Coar. I wouldn't be shocked any combination of people coming out of spring training out in a 5-man rotation. I wouldn't be surprised if it's more, if they're going to piggyback people. It could go so many different directions. I'm not saying anything you just said was incorrect. I think I'm just like staying away from this rotation somewhat entirely because it's just riddled with question marks. But Singer and Hernandez are obviously at the top as far as the people I'd be most interested in. But that's I'm not against Lynch. I'm just the Royals are. It could go a lot of ways there, and especially when you mix in injuries, it's interesting. So, what do you think, Jeff, of Daniel Lynch?
I like
Brady Singer. You're close though.
Illustrating your point.
I'm trying to peg you with a different.
You know what? That just perfectly illustrated the point you made, though, that they have eight different guys.
A random Royals pitcher.
I like the Royals pitching. I think they've got a core here a potential core that could be aces forever. I mean, then again,
Yeah.
we saw the Mets young guns. Is that too soon? Sorry, Matt.
Oh,
But
Well, that's the Mets. I mean, yeah.
yeah,
happened twice in my lifetime, and it'll happen again.
yeah. But I mean, Singer, Bubich, Lynch. Yeah, I like Hernandez a lot. I see the case for all of them. Singer was extraordinarily unlucky. His FIP was a
Mhm.
full run lower than his actual ERA. He was hurt. That's the thing. The upper arm inflammation is something that is scary. But there's clearly a pathway to him being pretty valuable. And it's costing you nothing. All these guys in the 400s. I mean, you can't just be chock full of maybes. You got to have somebody that pitches too. I get it there, but pitcher with upside and a good pitching environment, sure, sign me up.
Yeah, I mean, I have no argument against that. I think same before. I think I like them all. I could just see it shaking out anyway. So I think it's a fine pick. I think the only player I have a share of, I've done like 15 drafts. I have one share of Carlos Hernandez, and it was probably fresh off of when Rob Silver was trying to paint him as this. It had the possibility of being this massive hybrid all-star. If anyone watched PitchCon, that was interesting. He has like the fastball of like, I mean, I won't get into it. He basically has the arsenal of all the Cy Young winners for the last decade.
Well,
But
we'll be talking about him later anyhow. So there you go.
and we were just talking about Brady Singer as Brian's undervalued pitcher in the American League Central, and mine is Zach Plesac. Everyone just threw up a little in their mouth. Stick
Nope.
with me. I know last year there was a certain fantasy analyst that was kind of ramming them down everyone's throats, and became popular just to laugh at it. And then he kind of, he turned some people against him with how, he treated the 2020 season. But the fact remains, he had a terrible season, 4.67 ERA, strikeout rate way down, walk rate way up. It was just a brutal year. But if you kind of break down how he looked, it just looked like he wasn't kind of comfortable the entire time. And I think that there's a chance that he is not going to be anywhere near what people were hoping he was coming off that shortened 2020 season. We had that strikeout rate, 27.7%, and just looked like he was on his way to possibly being an ace type pitcher. But I always believed in the command and still do. So as late as he is going, I think that he is going a bit late for me. He's going like right now, 331. Getting pitchers with, I think, his ability to have such a low whip for ratios wise is difficult. I know that he may not be that desirable because if you don't believe the strikeouts are coming back, and I don't necessarily think they're going to, but with people are very interested in the Marcus Stromans. Adam Wainwright is a discount version of him, and we're not making the joke where Brian's saying, don't take so and so when you get this guy later. I'm not saying that at all. Low expectations for Zach Plesac. He's going at 331. That's where he should be going. But there's not many people that I think could give you a near, kind of a low near one whip-ish. That's the kind of command he has. He had a 0.8 whip in 2020. I don't know if I expect that, but I think you can get a near one from him. ERA more like a 4.1, 4.2 maybe. But at that point in the draft, I think there's a lot of value to that. I think you're going to get a ton of volume and a low whip, and that to me is pretty valuable. And he just, he's pretty disrespected, I think, for what he can bring. Wild min and max to 279 and 394. So I get the feeling I'm about to be double teamed against Zach Plesac. But Jeff, what are your thoughts on Plesac after a pretty brutal year from 2021?
If I hadn't already lived in Chicago for 10 years, I'd have great advice on where to go out. But aside from that with him, he got killed on his fastball last year, and he likes to throw his fastball a lot. This seems to be a bad combination. It's all about that. He didn't lose velocity. He just had really bad results with it. I don't know why that's the case. Did he have less movement? Did he get it up in the zone? Did he get figured out? That I don't know, and it requires a little bit more research. It's going to be a guy I'm going to dig into a little bit more because, he had that signature significance of those starts in 2020. I think that there's something there. I'm not going to be against you on this one here.
What do you think? What do you think, Brian? Zach Plesac, do you think he has the ability to give value later in drafts?
I am with you on Zach Plesac, actually. Yeah. I was in on him last year. Did not pan out well. That happens occasionally. But hey, I mean, look at this. This guy was going in the 5th round around main event time. He's now going in round 23. I don't know how much has, really changed with him. He still has good control, good command, and that's part of the appeal. And look, at the price that he's going in round 23, the volume is going to be there. Cleveland knows how to handle pitchers. He's going to go late into games. For me, again, I mean, I know I keep harping on this point, but a lot of the drafts that we're doing right now, focusing on best ball or draft and holds and stuff like that, you're really trying to get that volume, and you're going to get that with Police. You're going to get that with the whole Guardians rotation, obviously. But yeah, I like him where he's going. I don't necessarily know what to expect, but frankly, I think even the modest projections that we're seeing from ATC and the like, I'm okay with that even, I think, at this price, because it's 160 innings. I actually think he's probably going to go more than that. I could see him for 175. And, I don't know that the peripherals will be as bad as they were last year. I think we're going to see some improvement on that. But I just like that he's going to go deep into ball games. I like the club that he plays for, and as far as how they handle pitching. So, no, I actually with you. I like where Plesac is going.
And again, one reason I'm in on him, Jeff hit on it when he was saying that he got killed on his fastball, and he absolutely did. That was a big problem for Bieber when he was coming up. Same team, they kind of managed to work around it. And if you look at P-val, run value, whatever have you, in 2020 when he had the huge breakout, this is run value for his off speed. Slider -9, run value, which minus is good. Changeup -6, curveball 0. Last year, slider -7, changeup -5, curveball -4. Off speed stuff still plays, but in 2020 the fastball was a 2, and in 2021 it was a 17. So if he threw the fastball more, which, hey, why not throw your worst pitch a lot more? He can make some tweaks here, and I think that there's room for him to take a nice step forward. But I think just being conservative on what his skills just are, I love where he's going. So that's Zach Plesac, my undervalued pitcher. And now for a little bit of bad news, we're going into overvalued pitchers. Going back to Detroit, Jeff, who is your overvalued pitcher?
So I'm not as strident in my opinion as I was when I submitted this list.
You can change it if you want.
I don't know having a pivot. So I was going to go as Tariq Skubal. Just the home runs, 35 homers last year, got killed on his fastball. 22 of his 35 homers were against his fastball. The other hand, I mean, he's got Tucker Barnhart too. Guess what? He gets to improve his pitch mix also, and he'll have better defense behind him. I do worry a little bit that I think people are betting on him being able to wipe out a lot of those homers and take that a massive leap. He's going to 80 picks before Mize, and I guess I think a lot of it, what I was looking at was, I'll take Mize at the discount and thinking that the strikeouts will start to catch back up because I think his stuff plays, but I don't know. Skubal could take another step up too. So even though I was arguing against him earlier, I'm kind of not now. I think at 180 where he's going is fine.
I like Skubal. He's someone where, here's the thing. I think he requires, and there's a lot of fantasy players that don't do this. He's a player, if you're going to be excited about him, you had to watch him. Because especially in the second half, when they were yanking him out of games before he was available for a win. Thank you, Tigers. I still won a league with that where I had him, but you almost, God, every time you took him out before the 5th inning, he made a lot of improvements down the stretch. And, because it was, they weren't kind of leaving him in there. It wasn't enough to kind of erase a lot of the bad that he did. So, right. I see, SP streamer, Michael Simeone, he's very against him. And you see the reasons why. He was kind of a different guy in the minors. He didn't have any kind of thing overpowering, but he was kind of a fastball only guy in the minors, high strikeouts. He comes to the majors. Now he's trying to mix in stuff. I mean, it's a work in progress. And for all the reasons you were saying and how the staff could be, I'm very intrigued. That being said, I only have 1 share so far. He is going a little early. I think it's a bit early. So I think you kind of nailed it where you're saying you don't want to bash him, but you wrote him down, because I think it's he could certainly be worth this, but maybe it feels a little early because of the helium on him, right? Man, if he was just going a little later, I'd like it a lot more. Right. What do you think, Brian, is Skubal?
It does feel like there's helium on this price. Yeah. And I mean, he's been a hot name for a couple of years. So, I mean, that's kind of just sticking around. I agree with you. I feel like he's a little bit of an enigma, and I feel like I don't really know what he is. The way that I kind of like to draft pitching, I also want a little bit more volume and stuff like that. than I think he may be able to offer right now. And for him, we've talked about like the whole Tigers rotation at this point. So I mean, with him going 180, is he that much better than those other guys? I don't know that he necessarily is. I don't know that he should be back where they are, but I see some names right behind him that I do find a little bit more intriguing. So yeah, it's not, I don't think it's an egregious price or anything, but it's a little bit too rich for my blood because I just feel like I don't really know totally who Scooble is. So I probably won't have much of him.
That raises a good question. What do you do when you're not sure? Do you dismiss a player when you don't know, or do you like cross your fingers and hope? I mean, it's kind of like the same sort of type of questions. Like, what do you do when a guy lets you down? Do you say never again, or he owes me? I mean, I think it sheds light into our insight in how we draft and how we evaluate players.
And also has a lot to do for anyone in the audience. Like, I don't know how many times, I mean, you can play for high stakes, you can play for medium stakes, play for fun, play for free. And it also has a lot to do with the volume of leagues where if I'm playing in a few more, I don't mind. I'm interested. I'll take a share. If you're only in like one or two, you're in your home league, you gotta man it. You sometimes you don't want to take a risk on the guys that are a question mark. You want to take on someone you're a little more sure about. We're talking about Trick Scooble, which is interesting because when he was coming up, there was there's fantasy Twitter that talks about nothing but numbers anymore. And then there's scout Twitter that has their own different opinion. And it was very different on all three of these guys. I mean, there was a lot of people that said, oh, the best pitcher of the three is going to be Matt Manning. Seemed like a consensus for a while, but then there was this group that said, all right, well, Turk Scooble looks like he's probably going to be the best from a fantasy perspective because everyone saw the strikeouts, and the scouts were like, no way, he's a one pitch pitcher. I mean, it's everyone likes the three pitchers, but it just seems like it can go in any direction. And, we haven't seen, at least we've seen a little bit of it from Scooble and Mize, nothing yet of Manning, but yeah, it's an interesting trio there. Moving over again, that's Trick Scooble. Moving over to Brian's overvalued pitcher for the American League Central.
This one's pretty cut and dry, and we're finally up towards some top names here. And it pains me to say this a little bit because I absolutely love this guy and had him everywhere. Well, I forget what season I had him. I had a lot of him one of those years there. But anyway, Shane Bieber, he struggled, obviously had the shoulder issue last year. Yeah, it was last year that I had him, of course. And gets shut down about halfway through the season. I vividly remember that amazing outing. Him and Giolito, I think it was in Chicago, just going toe to toe. It was almost like that Jose Barrios, Corbin Burns, like dueling no-hitter thing going on. It was just an amazing outing. And I love Bieber, but he really dealt with a serious shoulder thing. He came back at the end and the velocity was down. He's going 34 overall at the beginning of the third round over the last couple of weeks. I can't draft him up there in that ace territory, knowing that he had that issue with the shoulder and that he didn't really get to come back, and not knowing how he's going to be this year. We got all these stupid question marks about what spring training and gearing up for these pitchers is going to be like this year. I can confidently say there's no way I'm drafting Shane Bieber at the price that he's going at right now. Absolutely love him. I hope he's healthy again soon someday, and I'd love to get back in at a nice discount price. But yeah, with what he's dealing with right now, there's no way I could take him at that price as far as Shane Bieber goes.
I like in the beginning when we're talking about Shane Bieber, just the point you made, I didn't want to skip over, is you mentioned remembering that the Jose Barrios, Corbin Burns dueling no-hitter game. It's funny how just regular season games can stick out. I don't know. I mean, Jeff, you remember that one? I remember watching that. Like, holy crap, this is so cool. Mm-hmm. And yep. we were talking about Casey Mize. I remember when he came up and he took on Matt, or was it in Texas, Dane Dunning. I remember watching that. It was like, this heavyweight boxing match. Like, hey, they're bringing both these guys up to face each other, and Dunning wasn't on his level, but they both kind of like showed off. It's amazing how some of those just in regular season games can stick in your mind.
Absolutely.
Brian, before I turn this over to Jeff, is this purely someone you have marked off? Do you just not like how early he's going? If you were in a league that was kind of fading him entirely, is there a point where you would take him, or is it just shoulder? I'm not taking him in the first 5-6 rounds, no matter what. Is he a guy you're just off on completely, or just off on at how early he's currently going?
Obviously, I just said I would take Brady Singer where he's going, and he had some arm issues. I would take
Well, no. I mean, in a reasonable area, just outside of his ADP.
So yeah, I take Shane Bieber at like 300, but no, I just no where he could go, where he could as far back as he could realistically fall. No, I'm not going to be in at any price that he would go at.
Jeff, are you in on Shane Bieber? Because one thing I've heard, and I don't know how many people this is, I've had enough DMs sent my way where, where people are talking about Shane Bieber. People were under the impression not only get hurt, but he was somehow bad because of the sticky substance thing, and it's not the case. He had a 3.17 ERA, 3.03 WHIP. He had a strikeout rate 33%. I mean, he was dominating when he was out there. I mean, his issue is just purely structural. So Jeff, or Shane Bieber, is he someone you're interested in for this year?
Not for the price. I think he needs to be more in the Freddie Peralta, Robbie Ray, Giolito area, after Giolito, in fact, for me. So like starting SP like 15 to 18, that's sort of the range where I kind of try to take him at. My tune might change when I see him throwing 100 in spring training, which might be summer training for all we know. But, I think I need to see something first with him. I know he came back at the end of the year last year, but I want to see it again. I get so scared with shoulder injuries. And the way it was reported, the way it was, it lingered longer. His rehab was longer than initially estimated. All those things make me a little uncomfortable. You can beat me with him, and you might if you take him there. And you get. He's like DeGrom in a way, and same with Sale even later. I'm more likely to take DeGrom or Sale at their ADP than I am Bieber at his.
I agree. I mean, I need him like around 90. Honestly, I would rather have Barrios. I would rather have Montas. I would rather have Trevor Rogers.
So you're even lower than us. Yeah. Or at least lower than me. Yeah.
I mean, I would need all those. I mean, I'd have to get into like the Shane McClanahan, Justin Verlander area before I'm really would really want to consider him. I'd take him above them. Now I'm getting all the hate mail from McClanahan. Never name people that you're down on. It's bad. People come after you.
Why do you hate? Why do you hate Matt?
Sugar Shane.
Sugar Shane. Everyone who's Shane is Sugar Shane. So that was Shane Bieber, Brian's overvalued pitcher. Mine was Casey Mize. Again, love Casey Mize. Just like some pitchers going around him. He was mine, so we could skip right over that. And going into our favorite late round targets, which we've kind of talked a little bit about two of these guys. My guy is kind of out of the blue, so we haven't touched it all. So Jeff, who is your current favorite late round target in the American League Central?
We did talk about him ever so briefly. Carlos Hernandez, he's pitcher like 159 right now, and get him in the mid 400s. I think he might have as good a stuff as his teammates. I think Bubic has probably better stuff, but Hernandez is really pretty strong pitcher. And, the thing that works against him is he had a hybrid role last year as a starter / reliever, and the volume of pitchers that the Royals have. But that's baked into his price. He's going mid 400s because of that. Whereas he pitched on a level that was probably like an SP6, SP7, at least at the very least a streaming, and you can always stream in that ballpark. I like that. You get some other AL Central teams you can pitch against the Guardians. I think probably pitch against the Twins is okay. And who knows, if we have universal DH, then it's not any worse than most of the National League pitchers and their lineups that they're facing. So I think he's an interesting guy to kind of add on. I think the Royals are kind of close, guys. I think, to being that a team that could be on the rise, I think they're like a year behind the Mariners in terms of like some good young talent joining the team. Bobby Witt will join the team this year. Prado might join this year. They might get Melendez up. They've got some interesting names. Asa Lacy on the pitching side could come up. I think the Royals have a little something going on here, and I think Hernandez is going to be part of it.
I do agree with that. They're definitely a team that could seem like the Royals. They seem like someone who could kind of jump out at any time. I would think that they're, probably, another year. But I would think you would think that too. But yeah, you can't discount the amazing talent that they have. Are you in on Carlos Hernandez? I've never really talked to you about him, Brian. We never brought him up on the show much. I mentioned that I definitely have been targeting him later in drafts. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I don't have any of them yet, but he's really intriguing. I mean, like all we've done is talk about this Royals and Tigers rotation. I just absolutely love this division for pitching. But yeah, there's a lot to like here. And I'll be honest with you, with the stuff he has and with some of the intrigue about all these great young Royals players, I actually can't really believe his price. That's not me necessarily saying that like I would take him at 350 or whatever it would be. But I'm surprised that more people are not really hyping him up. So yeah, I do kind of like for where he's going, and I think there's a good probability he will. You brought it up earlier, Matt. This rotation for the Royals could go in a lot of different directions. There's a lot of volatility here. There's some old guys with shoulder issues that might still be okay, and then there's some young guys we don't know who they are yet. There's just a lot of stuff there. So I don't know how many innings we get out of Hernandez. He's projected for 123 and about 22 starts. I think we'd all love that for where he's going. I think that's perfectly fine. And I agree with Jeff too. I was thinking that about the Royals last year, that they were on the precipice of being solid. I think if they got rid of my old friend Mike Matheny, I might help them out a little bit, Mr. Bunt. Yeah, I'm intrigued by Hernandez. I'm intrigued by a lot of this rotation, honestly. So yeah, I can dig it.
I think something that holds down ADP to a certain degree is roster resource early in the offseason seems to hold a lot of power in terms of value for players. I mean, they're as far as early offseason, that is something that drives the price. Rotowire obviously does great stuff in season that I can valuable for lineup. Things of that nature if you want to track them, but they have them listed as the SP5 with a couple of like big high profile guys and Coar and Daniel Lynch in the minor leagues. So people may see that and be like, oh, well, this guy's going to get clipped. So that may be, that's me speculating
Good
on what
point.
kind of keeps his price down for some. But that's Carlos Hernandez, a very intriguing pitcher. Brian, who's your favorite late round target in the American League Central?
Yep, we'll go right back to another name we've already been talking about, and that's Matt Manning, back to the Tigers rotation. And as far as this, like kind of like what you were saying, Jeff, earlier with Casey Mize, it's not necessarily that I'm projecting some kind of huge outbreak from Manning. Again, going back to the addition of Tucker Barnhart, I think is going to help. There's just a lot to like with a lot of these young Tigers starters. And Manning, as disastrous as some of his year was last year, I think there is still something to be said for putting in those innings. He pitched 85 innings, 18 starts, being out there, man, he got super unlucky also as well, I think, with some of his numbers too. Obviously, a 5.8 ERA is atrocious, but I think there's a lot I think you can expect an improvement from that. I mean, that's obviously pretty bad. I'd like to see the strikeout rate start to tick up, obviously, but he's in a good ballpark. He's in a good division. I don't think there's going to be really much stress on him. He could be at the back end of that rotation with maybe like Tyler Alexander, I guess. I don't know. But he's projected to go 130 innings. I think that's a pretty fair projection. I mean, I think he would have to get absolutely bombed away again to be out of this rotation. And for you to get that kind of innings in that ballpark, in that division at 484 over the last 2 weeks in ADP, I mean, that's a pretty good spot, especially for a guy with a pedigree who's young. I think he just got hit so hard last year that people are just like, nah, I'm just totally out. So yeah, I think Manning going at 484, yeah, I'll take him there.
It's always the shadow of a prospect getting lit up early. And it doesn't even have to be a big sample size. It could be a really small one. Some prospects are like, if sometimes a prospect wouldn't have been called up at all, they'd have an insane ADP. But if they were brought up for even a week and looked horrible, they get really shamed. I don't. It's surprising, I should say, that you can't get this kind of high upside prospect who's guaranteed a role in a rotation this late. Usually, it's odd. We've talked about him already throughout the show. But Jeff, if you want to hit on your thoughts one more time on Matt Manning.
So I think the sweet spot with Matt Manning is at keeper leagues. We have a lot of pressure, a limitation in the number of spots we can keep Matt Manning. If you're on a rebuilding team and Manning happens to be on a team where they're running out of spots, you might get him for nothing. And I think it's a big mistake to give up on these high pedigree guys a year too soon. So I think that there's some tension here that you can take advantage of. That's where I kind of look at it a little bit more, and sure, I like his draft price here. It costs you nothing, but I think I really think that there's a good opportunity, especially you play in an AL only or you play in a score sheet league like I'm in. I think you can kind of take an advantage of, that poor performance early. If you like the base stuff, you like the context there, and you think, okay, he's learning the game at the big league level. There's going to be some growth, and it's not just incremental growth; it could be explosive growth.
That's Matt Manning we're talking about. Both guys that are being drafted just being drafted late, Carlos Hernandez and Matt Manning. I'm about to go off the reservation here. My hitter here is going right now at 700. So in your typical leagues, he's of course not even close to being drafted, and he's not being taken in a lot of drafting holds. His name is Brent Rooker. But I'm taking my opportunity to shine a light on a guy that I just find incredibly interesting. One, the elephant in the room, playing time. Yes, he does not currently have any. But Byron Buxton, Josh Donaldson, Miguel Sano could stink. Alex Kirilloff's wrist. Trevor Larnach got a little roughed up. Between the outfield and DH, I think he finds at bats. In a regular league, this is someone that you may have to look at in the waiver wire, look at in spring training, fingers crossed, to see how he looks. And maybe, if something opens up. In draft champions, I have taken a couple shots late anyway, because here's the reason. I talk about standard deviation of launch angle a lot. For anyone who doesn't know what that is, average launch angle, you have a 30 degree, you could hit half your balls at 0 and half your balls at 60. Your average is 30. It tells you nothing. Standard deviation is your back control. He's at 27.4. I think kind of anything below 29 is decent. Anything below 28 is pretty good. For a power hitter, that's really good. Low ground ball rate, only 36% for a power hitter. Line drive rate, 25.2. A lot of some strikeouts here, but he hits the ball hard enough where I think he could actually have a little higher BABIP to increase his batting average a little bit. It's never going to be anything that a batting average is never going to be a strength. Near a 50% hard hit rate. But if you dive into the more in-depth hard hit rates, there's a couple of things here that I want to look at. 12.6% barrel rate. Everyone kind of knows that's good. I'm going to talk about blast percentage and dynamic hard hit rate. I'm not going to get too far into it. I'm going to just break it down really quickly. Blast percentage is something Alex Chamberlain came up with. Really great guy over at Fangraphs. Check out him on Twitter and check out his leaderboards. It's a great metric. It basically just takes the creme de la creme of barrels and kind of melds them down into the people that are hitting ideal barrels. 9.2% blast percentage, which means nothing to the audience. What is 9.2%? 8th in baseball, 0.1% behind Giancarlo Stanton. Dynamic hard hit rate. This is Connor Kirkon. He now has a job in Major League Baseball with a team. I think the Astros. It measures hard contact, except ideal hard contact using launch angle and exit velocity. It doesn't include pop-ups, doesn't include ground balls. It's just ideal hard contact. And Brent Rooker's is 24.4%. That's higher than Juan Soto, Vlad Guerrero, Teoscar Hernandez, Runter Renfroe, pretty much like, your basic all-star power hitters. Brent Rooker's really good. And he is someone that has solid back control that hits the ball incredibly hard. If he can get everyday at bats, he is someone where everyone always says no one likes to use the word free. Like, this player's going for free when they're not actually free. Brent Rooker's free. No one's drafting him, even sometimes drafting holds. So write his name down if he happens to get some at bats. He's someone that especially if you need power, get your eyebrow raised and take a shot, because I think that he is someone that has like just immense power that no one kind of knows exists outside of Minnesota. I don't know if you guys can possibly have any thoughts on there, because I think I've done more research on Brent Rooker than Brent Rooker's parents. You guys have any thoughts?
All the time we find guys like Patrick Wisdom or Frank Schwindel, both. I'm using Cubs here, but Brian LaHare, veterans that get a chance, and you find something you like about that here. Usually it happens to be on bad teams. I think the presumption is Minnesota's probably going to be a bad team. Sano could be gone. They could trade away Donaldson to a contender this year. They could find ways to get him in there. Yeah. Now that you know this and you breathe existence into Brent Rooker's fantasy value, are you now taking him in the 45th round or the 46th round instead of the 50th?
Maybe I will see. If I just see a couple people DM me, look at I took him, I'm like, yes. And then, of course, he never gets in at bat. But again, rewind it if you want to go through. I sped through those. But again, the names, let me say, Juan Soto, Vlad, Teoscar, Renfroe. I'm
persuaded. I just think you're going to have to pay a higher price now. You've created your own market.
I guarantee you are. And I'm not even being facetious, because I'm telling you, there is a Matt Williams DC late hitter tax, because Anthony Alford has started going earlier. I think that was a call out of you,
Taylor, Matt. People, I can't even get him anymore. I should stop talking.
You should stop talking. And this has been a big debate on Twitter. Should analysts give up their players? Yeah, stop giving out your players.
But you have to. That's what we
Yeah.
do.
But Rooker at 683 right now. Wow. Yeah. Interesting. But we'll
Yeah.
see.
Yeah, but in shallow formats, again, keep an eye on spring training. He may be on waivers to start your year. He's someone, just keep him on your list. If something opens up, add him in, because even after there's an opening, he's not going to be someone, people are always going to be jumping to Larnach or, some of the other names, where I think Rooker will actually be at the top because they went to him a lot last year. He performed well. So yeah, just keep an eye on him. So that does it for the American League. We talked way too much about Brett Rooker. But now that we end the show, Jeff, thank you for making the time. We really appreciate you coming on. Again, I don't think you need any kind of introduction, but if you could kind of remind everyone where they can find you, and if you have any great stuff coming up over at Rotowire. I don't know if there's anything new you have coming up. I know you're just kind of getting back into the swing of thing of getting the baseball show kind of cooking. Just kind of remind everyone where they can find you.
Sure, thanks. Appreciate it. First, Sirius XM Fantasy, 12 to 2 Eastern Time, Monday through Thursday. Now, I'm also doing the Sunday show, which is 1 to 3 Eastern Time. It'll be football centric this week and probably next, and then we'll be full-time baseball for the rest of the time. But baseball podcasts, as you alluded to, I'm doing 3 of those a week. Tomorrow, we're going to have Reds Coping Cast. It's going to be myself, Clay Link, Jenny Butler, and Doug Dennis. We're all going to lament over the Reds' lack of activity and the MLB lockout. So if you want to gnash at our favorite team, so be it. It'll be there, and we'll have some fun. But Scott Jensen and I do the Sunday night pod, have a lot of fun with that. And Fred Zinke and I do the Tuesday night pod. And then every Thursday, it's a different guest. So I talk a lot, basically, is what I'm trying to say.
And definitely everyone, you probably, if you're listening to this show, you listen to the Rotowire baseball show. If you're not, shame on you. Brian, tell everyone where they can harass you.
They can harass me on Twitter. I am at BJ Seymour, Seemore. Lately been doing the fantasy baseball bites daily, so you can catch me out there. Got a lot of stuff going on, just some intriguing thoughts on different players and stuff like that. But yeah, I just want to say, and I said it to him personally before the podcast, but thanks to Jeff for coming on. Been listening to him and Rotowire for quite some time. So great stuff tonight. Loved it.
All right, everyone. Thank you for listening to the Turn 2 Podcast. Again, if you want to follow me on Twitter, MATTWI77IMS. My DMs are always open. I love talking about baseball. If you have any questions about any of the advanced metrics I just talked about and you want to learn more about them, I'll send you some links. DM me. We can talk about it a little more and catch my Tuesday column over on NBC Sports Edge. It'll be coming back this Tuesday. So thank you for listening to the Turn 2 Podcast. We'll be next week. We'll be closing out this entire division series with the American League West. So come back if you really enjoyed the series, and then we'll go on to a completely something else. And hopefully we get good news tomorrow about the season. They said there's going to be an announcement. I get a feeling it's not going to be good. Do you guys have any predictions of what Rob Manfred's going to come out? Looked like there was a leak that he was just going to come out and say spring training's being delayed. Do you think we got any other news coming our way?
I mean, the fact that there's no negotiations scheduled, meetings with the MLB and the players strikes me as this can't be good.
Yeah, not going to be good. Brian, you want to add anything else? Just no, nothing.
No, I don't think so. I we'll see. I don't know if we'll see if he sounds inebriated like he did in that, what was it, after the World Series or something like that. I heard an excuse that it was just like it was loud and he heard something in his earpiece, but I don't know. He seemed a little bit off,
I forgot about that. All right.
Very weird.
Thank you for listening to Turn 2. We'll be back next week. See you, everybody.